Hi, welcome to the Microsoft Partner Showcase. I'm Brian Hitney, Solution Architect focused on data and analytics. In continuing with our Power BI Embedded series, we sat down with iLink to discuss their solution, EmbeDash. EmbeDash extends Power BI Embedded, allowing users to integrate their reporting and analytics into their own solutions. Olivier Travers and Rushi Malawat join us from the iLink team to discuss the solution in more detail. So let's get started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Microsoft Partners Showcase. I'm Brian Hitney, a solution architect here at Microsoft focused on data and analytics, and joined today by my colleague Chris Mitchell, who's also a solution architect focused on data and analytics. And we have iLink with us today. And from iLink, we have Olivier and Rushi, who are going to talk a little bit about their participation in our Solution Accelerator program and their EmbeDash solution. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves and talk a little bit about EmbeDash?
Sure. Thanks for having us. Glad to be here. I'm Olivier Travers. I'm a senior director at iLink Digital. We're a system integrator with a heavy focus on data and a strong partnership with Microsoft on the Power BI side, Fabric, and Power BI Embedded in particular, hence this EmbeDash initiative.
Hey, thanks, guys, for the opportunity. I'm Rushi. I'm working as a director delivery for the EmbeDash product with iLink, and I'm working more on towards getting this product, the roadmap for the product, and the Power BI services that we're integrating with this product. Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us, iLink team. One of the things that we've seen working on a number of partner implementations for Power BI Embedded is there's a lot of common friction points that partners run into in these implementations. Things like how do we deal with multi-tenancy? How do we build a custom navigation system and the likes? Can you tell us a little bit about some of the core things that you were trying to achieve when you assembled this EmbeDash solution?
Right. Yeah, exactly. The kit, the SDK to implement the UI is very well done, and we really love the playground. And so for us, it was starting from that foundation and extending to cover exactly what you said. Multi-tenant has been a big issue, and I would say we see this in the ISV space and also other organizations where it's less about the software and more about the data. We see that in banking and finance. We see that in healthcare. Say, for instance, companies in the pharma space that want to share data and reporting on that data with clients or business partners. So we could describe them as not quite ISVs, but definitely organizations that behave like ISVs. And they want to deploy their Power BI reports to a number of clients. And then you have the questions, what do I pool, but also what can I segregate? Because I have different data, especially in healthcare, for instance. You're going to have very sensitive, sometimes PHI, personally, human or personally identifiable data information. And you got to be careful that things are still gated by tenant within a multi-tenant environment, the data and the reports showing that data. So this is what we wanted to solve with the EmbeDash Accelerator. We're big fans of Power BI as Power BI Partner of the Year twice in a row on the corporate side, but on the ISV or quasi ISV side, we wanted to, I would say, leverage work we've done on an ad hoc basis, and we started seeing those trends where you have also, as you mentioned, the UI side of it. How do you integrate the reports with all the non-Power BI side of it, whether it's navigation or search, things of that nature. So right. That's how EmbeDash came to be.
Right. Yeah, and I would say that we found Power BI Embedded, as you called out, to be very powerful. However, we left a lot of things, or we'll say, air quotes, up to the developer in implementation. And the common feedback is like, yeah, well, I understand you gave us flexibility here, but is there a way that you could give us kind of like a default answer for these things? And I think that's a great place for the Solution Accelerator program to step in, is to say, hey, well, we've solved many of these problems for you, right? And the key
Exactly.
advantage that we're seeing there is, accelerated adoption, right? So now ISVs, instead of spending, potentially weeks or months in order to build their solution, they can turn that down to days or weeks. So have you guys seen, do you guys have any factoids or any information about like how quickly embedded implementations get accelerated by this?
Yeah, I would say typically it's cutting from month to weeks. I don't want to make it sound like it's done in 2 hours, in the sense that yes, it can be done very quickly.
Sure.
On the embedding side, right? With the accelerator, we definitely save a lot of time. We tend to work in the enterprise space with bigger ISVs, or again, maybe not ISVs, but companies that want to have a multi-tenant reporting and data sharing solution. And then we have other factors coming in where we also play our role as an integrator and consulting firm, more on the data modeling side and reporting side. So that can be still something that takes a fair amount of time to figure out. And also what we find is accelerating the technical side is great. And that's where the accelerator really brings a lot of time savings. But there's still a lot of, when we come in, unresolved questions more on the business side. How, as I'm saying, we here as the client, right, the ISV or quasi ISV, how do we want to market this? Should we add a markup? Are we comfortable putting people, customers in a shared capacity, or at what point should we have different capacities for different clients, etc. And those things are more nuanced and to be explored. And typically that's where there's a bit more, I don't want to say friction, but healthy discussions going on, and just thinking where when we come in, it might not be fully baked in, what the client wants to do. But from the accelerator means that the technical side, we're freed up from spending a lot of time there, so we can actually focus on those more business-centered questions.
That's perfect. That's exactly what I was going to ask about, right? And certainly this lets you bias your time towards the business value side of the conversation and spend a lot less time doing like plumbing code, right?
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, we can come in more as a business advisor, and we also can discuss other issues such as what would be the user experience for your clients, meaning the ISV's clients. We can take a step back a little bit from the technology. I mean, it is there, right? But we can expedite it. So it's also more interesting engagements. Some clients will have it figured out or would have a fairly simple use case, and then they don't need us, and that can really expedite it. But where we play, usually there's still a lot of other things to discuss, to really figure out. And we also see vendors ISVs or quasi ISVs where they're sort of iterating with the market. They might also want to scale it. So we might come in, they already have maybe an incumbent solution that they want to migrate from into Power BI, or they had something that was homegrown, and that's been a bottleneck to taking it to a broader audience. And that's where the accelerator and our help is going to help them scale to a bigger number of clients. But that also brings a range of new issues that they had not really had to face if they had, just a handful of existing partners in their embedded reporting.
Well, that's great context, Olivier. We'd love to look at the solution a little bit deeper. What can you show us?
Sure. Glad you asked. So let me give you a quick sense of the three main personas. And I'll start with the first one, which is the super admin. And then I'll talk about the tenant admin, and finally the consumers. So the concept of a super admin is the user or the users from the ISV or organization behaving like an ISV, purchasing our, subscribing to our EmbeDash accelerator. They have everything, right? They have the oversight of all the admin, all the tenants. So they're at the ISV. And the first screen that I'm showing here is kind of a dashboard, if you will, very quickly giving a summary of what's going on with the number of reports that have been deployed. You can see here that we mentioned canned and total reports, so I'll explain what that is in a bit. That's really the overview where you're going to situate yourself as the ISV, right? Whereas when we're talking about the tenant admin, well, this is each tenant's admin, each of the clients will have their own space. So we'll see they'll have basically a subset of what the super admin can see and do for their own tenant. And then finally, we'll talk about the consumer, which is, well, the ISV's clients, users, not people who are administrating anything, just people consuming, the end result, which is, well, okay, I wanted to have a reporting capability in my app. Now I have it. How does it look like from the end user's perspective? So here we have that quick summary. I don't want to belabor all of the screens, but let me walk quickly through the left organization here that you see in the navigation, the nav bar, where underneath summary, we'll see the concept of a shared workspace, which is where the core artifacts are managed. From those artifacts, we can deploy then into separate tenants. The tenant management, the capacity management, and the user management from especially the capacity of creating other super admins, and then some configuration. So I'll just show a couple of screens from the super admin where we have the concept of CAN reports. So the idea is that you have a catalog of reports, and we also have the same concept for data sets that you can navigate and search. You can upload from your desktop with a PBIX file, and those can then be deployed into separate workspaces. So if you just want to clone an asset, whether a report or a data set, then that's the foundation that you'll do it with, right? So you have that database of assets. You can easily act on those assets, like delete them. You can visualize the reports here in situ. You can actually edit in place as well, and categorize them. I want to expand on that categorization for a bit, because that's kind of a pseudo publishing mechanism for us, meaning that by the time we look at the consumer side, a report that has not been categorized won't show. Effectively, the categorization is the navigation scheme as consumed by the end users. So categorization that you can do from here lets you have things that are uploaded but not yet effectively published, that is visible to end users. So that category scheme is important in the workflow of rolling out those assets. I want to also mention, for people who know Power BI well, that we can support live connection reports where you have a report that doesn't have a local data model. It is connected to a separate Power BI data set. So that's why you have those data sets and reports. You can have regular import mode data sets, which have the report built in the same PBIX, or you can have a report that is just a thin report connected to a separate data set. So I'm not going to show the canned dataset screen, because it's pretty much more of the same, but for data sets, I want to show next the concept of tenant management. So you can name and have a summary of what's going on for each tenant. You can have their logo and a few other actions there on the side to turn on or off the tenant, for instance. And within those tenants, you're going to have workspaces. You're going to have a workspace per tenant where you'll have then the reports and data set deployed to that tenant. So you could have just cloned from the shared workspace. That gives you the ability to really go quickly from a shared base into scaling that up in all tenants if you'd like, or you can also upload assets specific to that tenant. And that's something that we hear a lot of demand from our clients, where, yeah, we're going to have a foundation, we're going to have shared assets for sure, but some of our enterprise customers, they want something customized. They might even do the report authoring themselves, right? And in which case, we need to be able to manage that separately from the canned basic reports, if you will, or data sets.
And then this is at the tenant level. I'm assuming then you can also define, intra-tenant level security, right? Which users have access to which reports and role-based security and all that stuff.
Right.
So how have you decided to address the security within your solution? I know out of the box Power BI really gives you roles at a workspace level. So we don't out of the box have the concept that that an individual report has different security properties. Have you extended it to include report level security options as well?
So from a security point of view, we have a kind of a two-level security, wherein tenant has their own private workspace, which keeps their report secured from the shared workspace. Plus, the row level security is implemented in a way wherein a report is uploaded. We have tags for every user. So when a tag is added to a user, based on the role that is added to the Power BI report, these tags will map it to them, and only the specific data would be visible to that particular person in the report.
Okay.
I
that way
hope
you
I have
can
answered
manage.
your question.
So that way you can manage the RLS for the report from within the tenant admin application.
Correct. Within the
Yeah, that's pretty
application,
cool.
we can
Yeah.
manage it.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, awesome.
So we can always, even as a super admin, view the reports themselves directly, from the interface. Quick check to see that's the right report in the right place. Now, the other key concept aside from tenant management is capacity management. So you can turn on and off, rename, and just check which capacities you have. We don't have yet the capability to create capacities here. That's done on the Azure side, but you can definitely manage them once they're created from the screen that we're showing here. And that's something that really tracks with what I was talking about earlier, which is we find that for some organizations, they're going to have a diverse pool of users or customers, and they might have a general population where they're happy to share typically smaller customers, and maybe all they'll have is the CAN reports, and the usage might be more lightweight. And they might have a few enterprise customers that have very unique needs and also a lot more consumption, and they might decide to gate them in their own capacities, even maybe dedicate a specific capacity for a single customer. Hence the ability to have those different capacities here. And of course, you need to configure the application itself. So you have a lightweight level of customization with things such as the logo, website loader icon, things of that nature. Not extremely fancy configuration. It's not quite a full, I would say, website builder. Maybe in the future, this will continue to iterate. Right now, we'll see the consumer side. It's fairly simple and clean. There's an alternative with the iframe rollout, or deployment model, if you will, where in this case, you just get the iframe. There's a token for authentication that is moved, around in the application, where then the ISV can be in charge of everything around weather, look and feel, navigation, etc., as opposed to using our app.
Right.
So that's the overview of the super admin. Very quickly, as I was saying, the tenant admin will have a small subset of what we've already seen from the super admin, but gated and limited to their own tenant. So mostly tenant workspace assets and user management. And the categorization scheme I was talking about. Everything else is, obviously not relevant to them. So they're not going to see the super admin specific options, of course. And finally, a consumer is going to have a navigation, which is where those categories I was talking about earlier is coming into play. So they'll be able to both browse and search. And once they've selected a report, they'll have the report in situ with the iframe, as well as the category-based navigation here on the left, and always the capability to search across all or specific categories, and a few quality of life options from getting into full screen mode to hide all the Chrome and navigation, bookmark management, downloads in a couple formats like PPTX, etc.
Cool.
So you see that you end up with a fairly streamlined and clean interface, but all the lifting for multi-tenant management and capacity management is built in the app. Of course, this part the consumer will never see. They just see a reporting app, and that's the whole point, isn't it?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, this has been a great overview, Olivier. What would be the next step for somebody who's interested in implementing this? How does somebody get started? Are there demo environments? Should they reach out to you? What's the next step?
So I would invite them to visit us at EmbeDash.com, where they'll find more information about the app, and they'll have the link to the marketplace to be able to get the app and evaluate or ask us any question they might have. If they want to have a customized live demo, we'd be happy to provide it to them. Just get in touch and be happy to engage.
Great. Fantastic.
Awesome.
Really appreciate your time. This has been a great overview. And Olivier and Rishi, thank you so much for your expertise and answering all the questions. We look forward to seeing the adoption of this over time. So thank you so much for taking the time to go through it. Chris, any other thoughts?
No, I think it looks great. I'm looking forward to seeing it in the marketplace and seeing our customers and partners get have success with it. So thanks for taking the time to go through it with us.
Thanks again for having us.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for tuning in and watching
Thank you
our
guys for
partner
having us.
showcase. Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks, Olivier. Thanks, Rishi. And obviously, thanks, Chris, for joining me today in our partner showcase. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Thank you. And
Thank
bye.
you.